Worst legendary commanders that you should avoid in Rise of Kingdoms here today in this channel. My name is Shinchi42. If you like Rise of Kingdoms guide to help you to succeed, consider subscribing, turn your notification on, and if you find this video to be helpful, go ahead and press that like. Alright everybody, welcome back here to another content. Today we're going to talk about the worst legendary commanders that you don't want to invest when you start out in Rise of Kingdoms, and as well as if you're continuing to play. So I want to check you guys here today. Have you made any of these mistakes that we are going to talk about here today in this video? Now, worst legendary commander that you invested on and you shouldn't invest on, okay? So first thing, that you should never ever invest a single universal sculpture onto any gathering type of commanders in Rise of Kingdoms. If you look into Cleopatra, Sondiok, Ishida Mitsunari, you don't want to invest any of your legendary universal sculpture on a gathering commander, because it is not going to give you any huge benefit when you are in the PvP fighting, right? So these commanders will give you no benefit and you should not invest on it. Now, you're wondering, how did I end up maxing these commanders? Well, there is an event and you can actually obtain these sculptures in here, the commander sculpture chest, and you can see that I can obtain Cleopatra, Sondiok, and Ishida Mitsunari. All right, so these commanders as well can also be obtained from the golden key as well. Now, what is golden key, you might ask? Now, when you go into the tavern, you can see that there is a silver chest, golden chest, and equipment chest. So the key commanders, they are not worth for you to invest, because over time, as you can see just right now, we have gathered or accumulated an Ishida Mitsunari. So really the thing that I want to tell you right now is that do not invest on any of the gold key commanders. Don't you waste your legendary commander sculpture. Now, you might say that, you know, some of us actually did. All right. So when we first started into the game, of course, there were not a lot of commanders. Like when I first started into the game, there were not a lot of commanders. At some point, we were kind of stagnant, and therefore we end up using some of our universal sculpture. But since now, in this stage of the game, we know how many commanders have been released. It wasn't like when I first started, we didn't know if there were or not going to be new commanders to be introduced in the game. So some of the older players have invested into the golden chest, golden chest commanders. And as the game grow, the strategy changes and we adapt to the strategy. All right, so the golden chest rewards in here, these commanders in here, these legendary commanders in here, you do not want to invest on any of them. Cao Cao, you will end up having more of that, and maybe there's two things that you want to kind of invest a little bit. Now, Cao Cao, to me, I think it's a good commander that has a long-term value, even for doing barbarian forts, but also good for hunting farmers. So that's one thing that I want to talk about, Cao Cao in the Golden Key. Another thing is Charles Martel. Now, these two commanders now have much better approach into it, because there is now the museum buff, which makes them a lot, much better to really invest into, right? Because you get more value into it. So the other ones in here, Julius Caesar, Frederick, El Cid, of course the farmers in here, Mehmed, Ragnar, Mulan, not really the thing that you want to invest on. Now, there are some spenders who actually invest on Mulan just to add buff when there is rallies. So that's gonna be on them, right? For free to play, you shouldn't want to invest onto Mulan. So there's two commanders that you want to invest on. All right, so it's gonna be Cao Cao and Charles Martel. Now, here's what I'm trying to say. I'm not telling you to dump all your sculptures in Cao Cao or Charles Martel. Probably Charles Martel will be on top of Cao Cao on investment side. Now, if you are like quite short onto maxing out Charles Martel, then you should probably use maybe 5 to 20 sculptures into Charles Martel to just finish it off. Be patient, take your time. There's no rush if you're free to play, because of course the whales are always going to outspend you and outprogress you. So being a free to play, you need to learn to be patient and really work onto the epic commanders, from what you can get from the silver chest rewards. And what you should do as a free-to-play player, you should definitely do a 5-5-1-1 setups. That's what you need to do so that you can have a good, at least, performance in the open field battle. Now, let's take a look into the museum in here. And one thing that I want to tell you, Cao Cao has a buff in here, 20% health and 200% active skill damage factor. And then when we go to Charles Martel as well, infantry attack 25% and infantry health 5%. So these two commanders in here from the gold chest, this is something that is worth actually having into the long-term investment. So if you end up needing to use a few sculptures, it is acceptable in my opinion. All right, so now let's talk about the defense commander. So as many of you guys would love to defend your structure as a free-to-play player, I want to tell you that this is probably the only one that you should probably invest into and dump sculpture is Yi Song-ye, because Yi Song-ye can defend your base. Okay, not the very best, but it's good defense onto the base. You have the AoE factor in here if it's maxed out. And another thing is that you can use Yi Song-ye as a more of a versatile commander, because you can go into open field and use him and use for the AoE. So this is a good commander to invest into. I would highly recommend for like putting sculptures into Yi Song-ye. Now, the thing is, with the defense commander, a lot of you guys will probably like, oh, I want to be a defender. And, being a free-to-play, let's understand the role. You're not going to be able to play that defender role defending for your alliance. The only defend role that you can have is defending your base. But in that case, if you get rallied as a free-to-play player, the chances are, if you're not paying attention, you are going to get wrecked and you're going to have a lot of deaths. All right? So there's actually a video that I just published as a free-to-play on how to defend properly. Make sure to check that video out. So I'm basically trying to hide your troops and basically getting better trades into that video. So as a free-to-play, you shouldn't invest into any garrison commanders, but there are an exception for that, like Yi Song-ye and a few more other commanders that can actually have some versatility that you can use into the open field. Because as a free-to-play player, your main goal is basically dominating or trying to do your best in the open field and creating havoc in there. So commanders like, Artemisia, which is also a commander that is really good into the open field, is something that you can invest. Now, if you are a free-to-play, I don't really recommend that you go for a Zenobia. You go for a YSS, because if you do get rallied still, you're not going to have all the amazing gear. You're still going to get wrecked, and you just invested in commanders that you just basically wasted. So don't do that, in my opinion. I think you are better off investing in a commander that can perform into the open field. If you're looking for a long-term investment, you can go for Ramses. You can go for XY, which is Xiang Yu. Honda is actually good as well, especially if you're playing in the Champions of Olympia. You get, like I said, Xiang Yu. And you can work on a little bit on Saladin, the 5-5-5-1 Saladin. There are so many commanders that you can invest into as a free-to-play. Get William. This is actually a good one as well. So as a free-to-play player, don't invest on defensive commanders. Don't try to think that you are going to be one of those defenders for your team. There are some commanders in here that we're going to talk about that kind of depreciate on its value. In the season 2, I believe, when Edward is released, and I believe Genghis Khan will also be released. Now, these commanders have good utility in the very beginning, but at the later stage, it kind of decline. Some people call them like more of like the glass cannon, because they're quite strong into their damage, but they are quickly to dissipate in the battle when they are targeted. So Edward of Woodstock is not something that you want to invest onto the long term into your sculptures, because you can invest on other things, and as well as Genghis Khan. And I would want to say that I made a mistake as well on investing into Chok Jin-young. This is another one that I would say that you can definitely avoid and not invest into. So these are some of the commanders that goes up in value in the very beginning, then kind of declines throughout the process. And as well as Cyrus, I think Cyrus could have been avoided in my case as well. All right, now let's think about like spenders a little bit here. Let's tackle this. I know it's a little bit into the free to play. Now, if you are a spender in the game, you are probably going to be investing in Hannibal Barca. Now, if you are a mega spender and you don't care about your money, you're just like a baller, then go ahead and invest in Hannibal Barca. But in a later stage in the game, if you are a medium spender, don't invest in Hannibal Barca. It's not going to give you any huge value. We don't use this. Even with the museum buff, no one is really using the Hannibal Barca. Now, in the case of Minamoto is actually really good to invest into. That with the museum buff, it actually made Minamoto much more appealing. And I would say if you are a spender, you decided that you want to spend, you don't want to get into the free-to-play style anymore, Minamoto is actually one of the commanders that is worth investing in the long term. You can use it, combine it with other commanders. Like I've been doing this with like Alexander Nevsky and Minamoto. That's actually a really good combo in the long term. So just kind of like a recap in here, don't invest in any of those gold key commanders because they're not really going to get you that benefit. And you can just definitely like work onto it into the, kind of like having a patience type of thing. It may take you a while, but as you progress into that, eventually you'll end up like having a good commanders and that good stats into that. And when you get all those universal sculptures, you should be investing into like YSG and get a 5511 Richard. Those are some of the things that you can definitely do in the very beginning, and then you slowly work on to like other commanders like Guan Yu, Alexander, right? Those like Xiang Yu, William, those type of commanders that will help you to succeed in the long term of the gaming. And you want to make sure that when you are a free-to-play player, every usage of your sculpture is actually used to something that is going to benefit you into the long term of your gaming. Because if you waste it, it's going to be harder for you to come back and you're going to regret it. So hopefully this video is actually helpful. If you like it, I do appreciate it if you could smash that like button. If you enjoy the content here today. So another tip that I want to give you guys, if you want to get a lot of gold keys, pretty much you really get a lot of it from players buying bundles within the game. And when players buy bundles into the game, you get more of the gold keys, right? So try to insert yourself into a jumping project, and I have videos for it as well. In the jumping project, you'll have a group of team. You're most likely not going to be kicked rather than you joining a random team when you first play the game. When you have a jumping crew, you get to know the people and you build a relationship and you build this community. And they're not just going to kick you if you're kind of slacking a little bit. They're probably going to help you to improve. And plus, most jumping projects are successful so that you can also be successful. And when you get more golden key, you can eventually max out those commanders much faster than the other players who did not watch this video. Anyway, rockers, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you again next time.